Hi, Misha here.
And this is Jay.
And it's time for another Q&A for the beginning of May, and with a few new subscribers and Patreons, which we greatly appreciate, and with the whole kind of at-home lockdown situation, we have a few more questions than usual.
Yeah, our previous record for one Q&A was 19 questions, and I think I counted, very rough count, about 62 this time, so this is going to be a longer one. We're actually going to end up breaking this up into two parts. We'll do roughly the first half of the questions in this part and then come back for the second part, so be sure to go check out both.
Yep.
There's also a small but vocal contingent of people who really want timestamps to see where the questions are. For various reasons, it's not very feasible for us. So what we will do is put the questions in the description of this video, so at least you can get an idea of where they fall on the timeline. And if there are any intrepid viewers watching this for the first time out there and there's not any timestamps in the description, go ahead and post a comment and I'll pin that to the top if you want to help some people out if you're watching this through for the first time. But hopefully with breaking it up, it'll be a little bit easier to parse if you don't have time to sit through a longer video. So.
Yep.
But yeah.
Alrighty.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it.
Yep.
Gotta scroll to the top for a second here. Alrighty, so starting with Lance. Lance says, "Hello guys, hope you're doing well." Pretty well, thank you, Lance. Hope you're doing well too. With all the American-made AKs coming out over the last few years, do you think manufacturers like PSA are going to be getting close or as good on quality as import AKs? What are your thoughts on FN barrel AKs PSA put out? I really enjoy what you guys are doing. It's totally worth being a $5 Patreon subscriber. Thank you so much. Thanks, Lance. Appreciate it.
As good as... I think American AKs in some ways might be better than imports in the realm of finish, appearance. Mm-hmm. Also maybe smoothness or trigger or even accuracy, because pretty much all imports are made to military spec, which are pretty roughly the same across the board.
I bet more, especially boutique AK manufacturers, are going to pay a lot more attention to candid sights than Coogee ever did.
Yeah. On the other hand, as far as the reliability and longevity, I mean, you don't know till you know, till someone's done it. That's going to be a tough one to even assess for a long time. Here in 10 years we might know, as people have had these guns as long as they've had imports, but that's going to be hard, and that's going to be hard for the manufacturers to even know, because theoretically Century thought they were making their Visca, VSKA, whatever they called it, out of superior steel to the RAS 47. Turns out not so much.
Right.
And that's kind of the problem. These companies, they don't have the original blueprints, plans, specs, and individual details. Stuff that Russia worked on as a country for decades to get exactly right.
Right.
So wait and see, but I think in some ways the American guns, especially for right out of the box things you can immediately appreciate, like I said, accuracy and looks, might even excel, because they're being made in much smaller numbers.
Right. Yep. Any opinion on the FN barrel AKs?
No, I have no experience, and I've heard mixed things. I'm sure they're fine, but
yep.
it doesn't sound like they're going to have it. Yeah, they are chrome line cold hammer forged, but they also are commercial and made to a price point. I don't know that they'll have the longevity.
Right.
But who knows?
I feel like we're going to end up seeing a tiered system like PSA is doing now, where you're going to have maybe potentially a less overbuilt system that will mostly work for people, and then a higher end premium version that costs a few $100s more, that has maybe some better steel in it or what have you.
Yeah, little tweaks and widgets and things that people want.
Yep.
Yep.
So there's no reason, I don't think, for it to ever get to as good as or better, except how much are people willing to put into it to get it to that point, basically, both from companies making them and customers.
It seems like by the time they get to that point, it's going to be as expensive as an import. I mean, imports, their price gets inflated because of transportation and tariffs, but they are large economy of scale, and they don't have to recoup R&D and tooling. American companies, yeah, they're right here, but they're having to pay American wages, and they're having to recoup a lot of setup costs. So I think in the end, for the same exact quality, you know, cold hammer forged, chrome line, barrel, forged, trunnion, and bolt, it's looking like 1,000-ish, maybe 900, but in that range is just kind of where it's going to be at.
Yep, right. Excuse me. SH says, love the content, guys. I actually put on your videos to fall asleep to. Don't worry, I've seen them all dozens of times. Hey, if our videos give you the ability to get sleep, which is a very hot commodity, then yeah, that doesn't offend me at all. Actually, more power to you. I've been getting the itch for another AK. Have you seen the QC with WASRs improve over the last year? I bought one a few years back that had feed ramp issues, and they didn't rivet the mag catch. I had one 12 years ago that was solid, but the one from a few years ago really left a bad taste in my mouth, especially having to send it back twice to Century for the FTF. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, the feed ramp thing is kind of an anomaly, but there was that batch of mag catch, because when they open up the mag well, they'll pull that out, I assume, you know, just to make it easier to open it, and you know, whatever. And normally they just put the rivet back in and, you know, flatten the rivet, but there was that batch where they either forgot to do it or didn't do it enough. So for any gunsmith, that's pretty easy to fix, but yeah, when you're at home, that might not be as thing. I wouldn't say the QC has really gone up. I mean, the big jump for WASRs was 2014 to 15, it seems like, but I think that was just one batch that Century kind of let slip out, where they didn't do the mag catches quite right. The nice thing is it's easily fixable, but the feed ramp thing, that's more of an anomaly. You just frankly got unlucky.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, certainly the reputation has improved on them over the years, but
you know, the finish is certainly a little better. And Romanian imports have kind of gone through phases of being made from new production parts versus surplus parts, and now they're back to new production, and that does give you a little bit more. The older guns, when you're building with some refurbished used parts on new parts, that introduce more opportunity for errors. But
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Dave Roberts has 4 questions for us. He says, why has it been that we have not seen another importation of Valmet rifles like the M76? Do you think we will ever see them imported again?
Well, that's easy, and had the Valmet out for a different video, but why not have it in this one too? Short answer, no. No, we will not. Reason, because Valmet, while it still technically exists as a company, sold off, disbanded, whatever, its firearms division around 1988, give or take. I've seen some sources say as early as 86, others 88, but anyway, late 80s, right before the import ban. They got out of the gun game. This is why Mishaco made the RK95 TPs in the 1990s. But after they made about 20,000 of those, along with the semi-auto M92S for that, they too quit the military game. Now, of course, Mishaco still does sporter guns, but they haven't made a military AK in 20 years, and as far as I know, they're not set up to do it. So they're not gonna rebuild a production line to sell a few hundred here.
Yeah.
So, God, I really want an M92S, and I'm with you, but no. And of course, importing once military guns isn't possible, and of course, if we import parts kits, there won't be a receiver, there won't be a barrel, and what's really left on a milled gun after that? There's no trunnion or anything, so you're not only getting essentially furniture in a bolt group.
Yeah.
So sad, but I don't know. With the company being closed, I think so.
Yeah, they're unfortunate. Great guns.
Yeah.
For each of you, what is one gun you've purchased and ended up hating, and what is one gun you've purchased that you did on a whim but surprisingly love?
I'll let you hit that first.
Okay, so this probably, I know that this has netted me flack on other on other forums that I've read. But the who was it that made that T36K?
Tommy
built, right? Yeah. I got a Tommy built G36K that was a carbine that had an extended flash hider muzzle brake thing on it. I saved up I probably put money back on that thing for 3 or 4 months before I was able to afford one. And the thing that got me on that gun was the muzzle blast on it. It would just shoot burn powder directly back in your face and on your arms. And I absolutely hated shooting it, which I was really disappointed about because, for one, it was an extremely expensive gun, and two, I would have liked to have had a G36, and they're relatively affordable for G36s, G36 builds basically. But yeah, I couldn't stand shooting it, so I didn't hold onto that gun for more than really a few days. So unfortunately. Now, I don't think the gun was built poorly necessarily. We shot it. It shot fine. There were some things that we questioned that we noticed on it, but and a lot of other people have had no issues with theirs. So I think I probably would have been fine getting a pistol version with a brace that didn't have that muzzle brake.
And to be fair, that's kind of what Woodstock recommended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but for the amount of money I had in it, not being 100% satisfied with it, and not enjoying shooting it at all in that configuration, I decided just not to keep it.
And I get that. I think if it had been $1,000 or even 15, but yeah,
I'll go ahead and chop the muzzle, or have somebody cut the muzzle off and put on a different hider.
Because it really did seem like it was and we've noticed that with a lot of guns over the years, that the brake can really make. What was that one gun you had that had that concussion brake?
That was I had a VG6 Gamma on a Galil Ace pistol, and it was.
When he would shoot horrifying. It, when we were out at the long range under the shed, I had to go. It was physically painful to stand next to.
And it was whenever I went back, I didn't notice it that much as the shooter, but then whenever I went back and watched the video of the shooting, and I could see that the fireball engulfed my entire head every time I shot, I pulled that.
It was not so. Yeah, it may not have been so much the T36 as the thing, but me having one of the Michael's machines, M&Ms, I wasn't ever tempted. And when you have the real HK versus any kind of copy, it's it's hard to, And I mean, I paid more for the M&M, but not, I guess it was not a huge amount more. I mean, it was, it's just, and I get that. It's, when you really want something, it can be that way. So what about the opposite?
The ARX, we've mentioned it many times in the videos before, so I won't get too much into it here, but getting the Beretta ARX, whenever you got yours the first time, I think I kind of teased you a little bit about it.
Quite a bit.
It looked terrible. I mean, to me, it looked terrible. It was super tall and very plasticky feeling and weird. And then actually going out and shooting it, I immediately wanted one. And then, of course, bought one shortly thereafter. And it's one of my favorite .223 rifles.
I think another thing that turns people off is a lot of stores didn't have the full ARX 100, but they had the ARX 160 22.
Yep.
And they just assumed that the 100 was built the same as the 22.
Right.
Which, I mean, the 22 feels cheaper. It is cheaper. It was a third the price. Even a fourth, and it's not built from steel reinforced plastic or nylon reinforced with fiberglass, whatever. It's gonna feel cheaper because it is cheaper, and a lot of people I think judge the 223 based on how the 22 felt.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal rifle.
Yeah.
So, what about you?
Well, gun I really wanted and then got and then was pretty underwhelmed with, gotta be the FS 2000. The FN. A friend, acquaintance friend, whatever, had one back when they first came out, and he decided he never shot it, he wanted to sell it, so I saved up. I got it off of him, because back then they were pretty expensive. And that was when the tactical was out. The standard with the optic wasn't out yet, so I got it. It was cool, but it was kind of ammo picky and had that weird toilet bowl thing. It wasn't easy to clear jams. Eventually, I sold it to another friend who just wanted it. Fine. Then I got one when CD&N had the standard version, the one with the optic, and they were cheaper. They were 14 shipped. liked it more, how it looked, and how, you know, being more military. But again, the poor trigger, and I think what did it in for me is we were starting to get good bullpup options in, because when I got the first one, there weren't bullpups. But by the second one, you could get Tavors, and then soon X95s, and then all gay 3s. And so, yeah, I sold that one to, you know who, and he still has it, but I doubt he ever shoots it.
Yeah. And that's one that occasionally, whenever you want it again, we go out and shoot it. We borrow it and go shoot it, and then you immediately remember why you don't have it.
It's one that I like in theory. However, this has been in several videos, much like his ARX. My original CZ805 Bren. Now, originally I did buy a Bren pistol. This is not a pistol. You might have noticed. That I think you got my pistol. I don't know. Someone did. Anyway, the pistol went. I ended up getting a carbine, but I'll get to that. We bought this on a Saturday morning at the Ozark Armory back when Bill still had it, and it was mostly because it'd been sitting there for a while. They wanted to sell it. We looked at it a few times. We liked how smooth it was, but it looked blocky and they were expensive.
And it was a pistol with nothing on the back except sling plate and heavy.
Yeah, and then the brace adapter came out. Like, okay, fine, I'll get the adapter, and went and bought it from them. They were happy to sell it. And then we shot it.
Yep.
And then this whole thing began. I mean, you ended up with one, and now we have Bren 2s. And I went through a lot to check millify it. First off, I sold the pistol to somebody who wanted it, and got a carbine with a 16-inch barrel. One of the first things, then the mag kit came out for the original mags, which I know logically you want to use the AR mags, but it's modular, so that's fine. One thing that bugged me about the original 16-inch, it was threaded half by 28. The original gun was 14. Long story short, I ended up with a military 14-inch barrel. And then I got a flash hider, and then pinned and welded it on for an overall length. It's pretty well my ideal 805. And even after the 2 came out, I have no desire to sell this gun. It is so fun. People complain about the weight, but it's so well balanced, it's just not noticeable. So that was an extremely pleasant surprise, and really kind of got me into modern Czech things more. I don't know. Before that, I was more a fan of like the VZ58. And
third question from Dave. Any chance we can see a tour of both of your gun rooms?
Sure. What do you want to pay? No. There's been a few clips here and there of parts of mine. That's all you're really gonna see. For obvious reasons. It's not set up for people showing anyway, and there's always, of course, a little bit of security. Yeah, for me, it's a security thing. It's not so much that I'm concerned about people seeing what guns I have. Having a YouTube channel has really just put that out. It's blown that out of the water for being a thought there. But it's more of I don't really want people to see how I have my storage set up. If anyone decides they want to come try to take things, so yeah, I don't want to show people where the underground access is to mine, and you know the bunker to get through.
I don't want someone to figure out how to disable the high beam laser trap system that I have set up.
Well, I have cats with frickin' laser beams.
Oh, that helps.
But it was hard to get them in that tank of water. And then there's the guy from Monty Python asking the 3 questions over the bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Hard to get John Cleese to show up for that, but let's see. I don't think that was John Cleese that did that. Never mind.
That's why I didn't say either.
Somebody's gonna correct me in the comments.
You're gonna be added.
Yeah, I know. Don't at me. All right, and then the 4th question from Dave is there any reason an FAL, more specifically a DSA FAL, should not shoot steel-cased ammo? I see DSA warns against it. If so, why?
Most manufacturers will, because steel-cased ammo is typically loaded a little more haphazard, and steel-case includes Tula. And I have seen Tula blow up in an M-Bell FAL. The gun was fine. It did wreck the mag because it went out, so the gun was fine. But it's mostly because of how loaded. Plus, steel case does put more wear on your gun than brass, but as I've said in other videos, it's incremental wear. Every time you shoot your gun, you're putting wear on it. It's just a percentage thing. It's basically a cover their butt thing.
Yeah, that is our opinion of it. We are not DSA and we're not lawyers, so but it seems to me like a CYA thing. And if you Google search steel cased ammo FAL, you're gonna find at least multiple threads, and it could be all from the same person, but multiple threads of people saying they blew an FAL up using Tula ammo. And again,
they're off from
not
me.
saying that. Yeah, either way, but there are theories as to why that is, with steel cased ammo not being a little bit more rigid and being more apt for case head separation and things like that, or separating at the neck. But I don't know. I'm not an expert in
But
that. So
on the other hand, we've had no trouble personally out of other steel case, like what Brown Bear, Wolf, whatever.
Right.
It seems like Tula is kind of the low end, and if you want to roll the dice with lower power cartridges from them, fine. But 308, 762, that's some oomph.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you have a little bit better QC. I mean, I've even had batches of Tula recalled by them.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's just an abundance of caution.
And most manufacturers recommend either one type of ammo or brass at the very least.
It's in a lot of modern manufactured manuals to say don't shoot steel case unless you void your warranty.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yep.
Joseph says, in your MilCert videos, when you speak about a gun going through trials and the test and evaluation process, can you elaborate more on what these militaries did in trials? Is there any commonality in how trials are conducted in the field?
I'm going to say, honestly, the one to talk there would be Chris Bartacci. He knows more about trials, at least for American military guns. I would say every country has different standards, from basically just buy a few off the shelf and see how they work in the field. It depends if you're fighting in a war, if you're fighting peacetime. I mean, the M1 Garand, for example, it went through testing for over a decade in revisions, whereas the M16 was thrown straight into Vietnam, kind of through backdoor channels originally, and then, the XM. It really depends on the country's situation, and yes, every country has incredibly different standards.
Yeah.
Obviously, round count, everyone's going to try to run a few thousand rounds at the very least, some endurance. Most of them test them against at least one other equivalent gun. Usually they'll use their existing service gun as kind of a baseline, and then they'll have one or two others there, just because. But it does vary from country to country, because every country has their own standards. For example, Switzerland is really big on accuracy, and other countries are big on how cheap can we make them. I wonder who I'm talking about. And and then there's Britain that did the L85, which, oh my God, the primary concern there was basically Parliament and politics.
His second question, this is Joseph again. Second question, do you have any plans for any black powder / pre-smokeless powder MilCert reviews? Keep up the awesome work, guys. Awesome channel.
I don't trust myself to do black powder because so much is visual measurement.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my answer. What about you?
I've tossed around the idea of getting some black powder guns, namely because of where we are, at the very least, we can pretty much just order them online and have them shipped to your door. I have shot some black powder. It's fun. The one thing that I did do, though, when we had black powder out, is I did not have to clean it. So, and that's one consideration, is having to clean it, but then also just the process of having to load it. There is a meditative aspect in loading a more primitive firearm, but at the end of the day, I just enjoy shooting smokeless powder guns a lot more. Even with my cowboy guns, like my single action revolvers, the loading process, shooting the gun is fun, but then it's a very slow reload downtime between cylinders, so I tend to not shoot those as often as I do my semi-autos, where I can just load.
It seems like it might be one of those things that's more fun either if you have property to shoot on at your house, or if you're out at your cabin for a weekend and you just don't have a lot of time, and you have plenty of time and no constraints there.
Yeah, I 100% could see doing that. Doing something like that in 5 or 10 years, whenever I'm getting older and can appreciate that type of thing a little bit more. So,
yep, they're fun.
Yeah,
And I love the delay. Like it definitely
cool.
is a callback.
Yeah.
I like shooting them, and I grew up with them. My dad always black powder muzzle loaded hunted. So.
Sure.
Yep.
Connor says he's got 2 questions as well. How did you and James Reeves become friends?
You kind of just bump into people. I think one of the first times we really talked was when they put out that video. I think it was on the Visca or the RAS 47. The guy who's no longer at TFB, whenever he put out that video praising, it wasn't James. I think it was Patrick or whoever.
I don't know.
I don't know. That there dude. And I kind of jumped in, not so much defending the Century gun because I think they're POSs, but not going hyperbolic. And basically he was just appreciated for my approach and also apologized for the shit-tastic review. Kind of his words, not mine. And he's just a funny guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't take himself... I think people take him a lot more serious than he takes himself. Like, so much of what he does is tongue-in-cheek and satire, and it goes...
Yeah. Connor's second question. What do you think of the American AK-103 clones coming out, and do you think it'll ever lead to us getting an AK-203 or even 15?
Okay, I'm not familiar too much. I know the RPK 203, but I'm sure there is an AK. But the AK-15, I know, that and the AK-12. I think there's a decent chance Kalashnikov USA might do those because they have the prints. But what kind of distresses me about a lot of the other US-made AKs, they call them an AK-103. To me, the devil's in the details. They're not AK-103s. They're basically side-folding guns that have black polymer furniture, and they think that's good enough. It's like a lot of people call the Arsenal SLR-104FR, one of my favorite guns of all times, an AK-74M, or conversely, the SLR-107FR, an AK-103. But it's not. We've done a video comparing all the differences, but it's one of those things, you look at the rib dust cover, it's a little different. You look at the muzzle device, it's a little different. You look at the mag catch, the scope rail. Each individual thing is like, oh, no big deal. But when you notice there's 30 differences, you go, this isn't an AK-103.
Sure.
So the only one I think that might get it right, really, at least to my standards, might be Kalashnikov USA. Yeah. I don't think Palmetto State's just basically putting AK-103 style furniture on a regular gun, and
yeah, it has a different gas block and everything, right?
Yeah, it has the modern 90-degree 24mm threads with the long collar. It has the modern Russian muzzle brake, which is different. There's just so many little things, and a big one, a smooth top cover. A lot of the 103 clones are still the rib top cover, which is just
yeah. Okay, Cody says, why do you think it took so long to develop double-stack, double-feed magazines for SMGs? Like, I understand cost savings.
I forgot to grab that one. Well.
Like, I understand cost savings and simplicity, but I'd argue that a straight-wall double-feed magazine is simpler than one that had to taper to a single feed.
Actually, this will serve. I was going to grab my Thompson, because the thing is, double-feed mags were pretty much there from the get-go. This is the Beretta 3842 I just had built. But this derives from earlier Marangoni designs like the 1830 and the 18 and even the Villa Perosa. This always was a double stack, and this was first made in 1935, and then again it was based on earlier versions. But the Thompson was made in 1916 through 1918, and it was always double stack, double feed. So one of the first submachine guns, if not literally the first, was double stack, double feed. The reason double stack single feed came about, the original MP18, commonly known as a Bergman, actually fed from the snell drums of a Luger, which obviously were single feed because they went to a Luger. So that's kind of where that got introduced. And there are technical issues to manufacturing and loading. When you do a double feed, you got to make sure the rounds don't all pop out the top. So I think the reason the single feed kind of stuck around, the top was more like a standard pistol mag, and it was a little cheaper to make. And once the MP28 did it, everyone just kind of copied that from the MP38, MP40
Sure.
to the Lanchester and the England, which led to the Sten. So it just kind of got copied more than anything else. But no, double stack, double feed were around since the beginning, essentially.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Chris is from Austria, by the way. So this will help frame some of the questions here that he'll be asking. Hi, Misha and Jay. I hope you're doing well. Thanks, you too. You've got a great channel. Appreciate it. In fact, you're one of the reasons why I started collecting Czech firearms and dive ever deeper into the history of them. First question, which leads me to guns I couldn't find on your channel yet, the VZ54 sniper rifle and the VZ47 training air rifle. Could you tell your viewers anything about them, since there aren't many videos out there, and I bet your insight and opinion would be appreciated.
I don't do a lot with sniper rifles because blind, and as I've jokingly said, the irony is too much. There were some VZ54s imported a few years ago by Century, and they were reasonable. But at the end of the day, it's still just a bolt action with a scope stuck on it, and since I can't shoot for accuracy anyway,
Yeah.
And I don't really collect air rifles, although I do know the two you're talking about. I'm sure they're finally made guns, but not having owned one myself, I hate to speak to them.
Yeah.
And I remember there was once about 80 years ago when a bunch of Austrians started collecting Czech firearms too.
Chris' second question is, do you know anything about the ZB-26 and the ZB-30 machine guns that were converted to semi-automatic only for the civilian market? There are a few sources out there, and they strike me as relatively cheap, around €4,000 here in Europe. There's little to no information about how the conversion is done and the quality of the build.
Unfortunately, again, our laws are extremely different from yours. We have the once a machine gun, always a machine gun ruling.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is another good one. I didn't even know why I brought this out, but for example, this started off as a little submachine gun. Unknown friend's dad brought it back from the war and forgot to do the paperwork, so we had to basically be demilled, de-wadded. De-watts have changed over the years, but basically originally you could saw cut them, later you had to torch cut them, because once a machine gun tube receiver is just that, you cannot make it a semi-auto. What we can do here, we can use the scrap metal, as the ATF views it, from the original receiver, and we can make it into a closed bolt, and the full auto is disabled, and it's now semi-auto striker fired. That's legal here because the receiver, since it's a rework, is all new. And of course, it invalidates any CNR status. In Europe, it's a little bit different. They don't quite interpret once a machine gun, always a machine gun the same way. And I don't know that they have near the restrictions on open versus closed bolts, which, matters more for subguns than it does all machine guns.
Right.
I would imagine those over there are more original. They probably just did a pretty basic conversion, but I don't know. Funnily enough, the price sounds about the same because a semi-auto Bren, which kind of is based on, they're about $4,000 here too. So it seems like the price, and I agree, for as cool as those guns are, why not have one? I'd rather have that than a lot of other guns, like say an MG42. That's just me though.
Sure.
But unfortunately, no, since we're not in Europe, and even in Europe, depending on the exact nation, there are quite a few restrictions and caveats to owning them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris' third question is, anything new on the Polish WBP AK front, Lynx pistols and Fox rifles? They seem to be great guns, but always kind of forgotten in all the talk about the usual suspects, Arsenal, Kujir, Saiga, etc.
Yeah, we try to promote them and talk about them as much as we can.
No, we love WBP stuff.
Yeah, and not...
We had good experiences with it.
And not because they bought our houses. No, their guns have just been really, they run well, and because they are a small factory, they can put the more attention to QC.
Right.
But that's also, it's kind of the benefit and the detraction.
Right.
They can't send over 20,000 guns a year like Cougar.
Right.
And they don't have the marketing department like Arsenal to keep their stuff in the thing. And Arsenal's been at it for 20 years here.
Right.
When they first got started, they were kind of lesser known too.
Well, and if they're getting their stuff from Bulgaria, which is already from the Arsenal factory, which is already established. I mean, WBP has been making guns for what, less than 20 years at this point.
Yeah, I think they started off. They started off, and the company started off in the 90s, and they really started making parts in the early 2000s, and they kind of got to full guns about 15 years ago, and the first kits came over here just over 5 years ago. So, and they're being imported by a smaller company, Arms of America, not a big one like Century. The latest news here is the Mini Jack, which is basically a revision of the Lynx. Yeah, the name is hilarious, at least in English, but over there the gun's called the Mini Jack, the military gun, and that's basically a little bit more like their military. It comes in now with a threaded barrel and a few other minor tweaks.
Yep.
And they've tweaked the cost a little bit, because originally the Lynx Classic came with 2 handguard sets. Now it just comes with 1. The importer said most people didn't want the extra handguard set, so they just stopped doing it. And there's still the Lynx Tactical, which is, as it sounds, a little more tactical.
Yep.
And you know, they just started selling some 5.56 kits here to build your own, and yeah, the future looks good, but the whole lockdown COVID thing has stopped or delayed a lot of importation.
Sure. I think people too are too focused on the next new thing. Like, maybe another video on a WBP doesn't get as much traction as a video on O'Reilly Defense or whatever else is coming up.
Well, one thing, you know,
it's already out and proven at this point.
A couple of weeks ago, we did the video on the SLR 107R versus WASR, and in the comments, people asked, what about the Fox? The reason we did the WASR was just, that's what people know.
Yeah.
That's not to say there might not be a follow-up with the Fox, but yeah,
we've got ours at this point. You're still selling them in the store? It's just...
Yep, I've got 3 behind me. We had to wait on converting them because the gunsmith had to stay home because he's 68, and you know how that goes. But I just had 3 more converted yesterday. They're all sold, so they're heading out on Monday.
Yep. His 4th question is, do you happen to know if there are any problems with Polish Pioneer Arms AKs in general, or is it just IO who messes things up once the rifles hit the U.S.?
You know, Pioneer USA, when they started importing instead of IO, they said that they kind of pointed the finger at IO, saying the problems are their fault and they were going to do better. They're not doing better. You know, the Robski gun obviously lost headspace very quickly. That doesn't seem to be all of them. That does seem to be a fluke. But that was a kind of pre-release sample that they swore up and down they'd improve their trunnions on. So, yeah. I wouldn't. I don't. Their QC just seems so slipshod because of the 4 or 5 guns we had come in. All had issues, but the thing is they all had different issues, which tells me their manufacturing is kind of all over the place. Usually if you get in a gun and all 5 have the same issue, you can point to, hey, this one, there's a failure at this one point on the production line, fix it. But when there's all these different issues, where do you begin?
Right. And I think it'd be easy to figure out if it's an importer issue or a manufacturer issue, because something like the IO imported Archer, which was an FB Radom build, was phenomenal, but like on mine, the magwell was really rough. It actually, until I realized what was going on, it was gouging my magazines open because there's jagged pieces in the magwell, and then they just slapped some black paint on there to cover it back up. That didn't even match the rest of the finish. So that's obviously a poor importer issue.
Same goes for like anything to do with trigger group. So that's easy to point out and say, okay, the rifle is solid because it came from FB Radom, but the importer obviously jacked it up a little bit. But in the Pioneer Arms case, when the heart of the rifle is rotten, it has to be a manufacturer. Yeah, when they're using, the thing is, you can get away with cast trunnions in an AK. You can, but you have to have very good QC and rigid testing, and they do not. I mean, Ruger's been using cast for all kinds of guns for 40 years, and Ruger's are good guns.
Question number 5. And I bet it's pointless to ask you if you know anything about Chinese SDM-AKs, because I think you've got an import ban or something going on in the US. But SDMs are the cheapest standard AKs to find in Europe besides Kujir, and information about them is scarce. Rumor has it they're just rebranded Norinco's. Anyway, best wishes from Austria.
Well, I mean, Norinco was just a brand name anyway, so you're right. They're the same factory. Word is that China basically has AK production down to one factory, and even that factory is using mostly existing parts stocks, and they're not building them for their own military, that's for sure. And it sounds like they're only building them for third world militaries who want the bottom of the barrel gun, the cheapest gun. So I haven't heard great things about them from like contractors over in the Middle East and Africa that work with the full autos. Probably the civilian ones in Europe are made a little better, but yeah, they're basically just Norinco 56S's, but maybe not quite made with the same attention as the 1980s. They're a thing. But no, we've had a ban here since 1994, so that happened when I was a teenager, and so.
I think the comment you made to me before we started recording is Chinese guns probably have not changed all that much.
No, the AK platform is kind of frozen there because it's an old design to them, and they've moved on a couple of generations already in their own military, so they've stopped development.
Sure. Michael says, thanks for all the vids and info, gents. Please bloviate about the modern Armalite AR-10 series made since 1995. Cheers.
Well, I'll start off and then hand this over to Jay. I don't have one or really any interest in one because I have this. This is a Portuguese kit build done actually quite a long time ago in the 80s of an original AR-10. And that's kind of where I'm at. This was made back when the AR-10 was pretty different from the AR-15. And the newer AR-10s are basically upscaled AR-15s for all intents and purposes. I did have that BRN-10A, which is kind of a cross. It externally looks a lot more like the old one, but internally is still more compatible, which is not a bad thing with newer stuff. So mechanically, it's more like a modern one, although externally it looks more like that one. With that said, when I got that one, you ended up with the BRN-10A, so you have more experience with a modern production one than I do at this point.
Yeah, and that's, I think I remember when I was first looking at getting an AR-10, modern AR-10, I think you kind of waved me off of it because you didn't really like shooting them that much. Like the recoil impulse, I think you said it was pretty jarring. And
yeah, for as light as they are compared to a lot of other 308s, yeah.
So my experience is mainly limited to the retro guns. So your original AR-10, my BRN-10A, which is, like I said, a reproduction of a retro gun. And I like shooting it fine. It's fun. It's a neat gun, and the main reason why I have it honestly is because of the retro thing. Otherwise, I may not even have a 308 AR. I have a Galil Ace in 308. I have my Setme C308, which is not really Setme, it's a C308, but it's kind of a Setme. And then now I have that BRN-10A, and those are my 308 guns. So I've never really felt the need to have a modern AR 308. Pretty much stick with the 223/556.
Yeah, that's not to say the new Eagle Arms Armalite guns are bad. They're not. They've been kind of considered the top of the heap, at least up until recently when all these AR manufacturers. But if you go back 10 years or more,
sure,
they were priced more too. They were $1,500 when DPMSs were $1,000. So
yeah.
They seem well made. I know that the government has bought some. There were those Department of Energy trade-ins that CDN had a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the government bought enough of them to buy some.
Yeah.
So they're good guns.
Outside of the historical context for us, we really don't mess with AR-10s, modern AR-10s that much.
Yeah, and for me, I picked that one up because it just came around, but I'm more of an FAL person, and when I'm feeling enough of that, the BM-59 is probably my next favorite 308.
I love shooting the roller delayed guns. Like they're it's very soft shooting in my opinion, compared to the AR-10s.
Yeah, the AR-10 is focusing more on lightness and compactness than some of the others, I think.
You know, it's weird because I feel like my BRM 10 actually, like, it was pretty smooth.
Yeah, it is.
It didn't seem uncomfortable at all. But definitely punchier than a 223. Storm SG553 says, "Hi, Misha.
Hi.
I'd like to get an update on any plans you have for yours or Jay's collection of Swiss imports for 2020. The Sig Sauer AG, BNT as well. Particularly interested in the reintroduction of and last of the SG552 Commando and long barrel version, as well as the 553 Alpine brought in by Dave at Sand Imports. Also, Jay's opinion overall on Swiss guns. Does he own any personally and looking to add any in the near future?"
Yeah, I mean, you follow Dave's stuff, so you know that, yeah, the SG552s, those are been on order. I do have a couple of the STGW 07s on order whenever those happen. I've been thinking about getting one of the APC 9s, trying to get as close to that new, U.S. military PDW.
Yep.
But with those guns, you just, put in your order, pre-order, whatever, and you just wait and see.
Yeah, well, it gives you time to start saving up.
Yeah.
Or selling guns off to be able to afford it. So, I think, so actually until I got my Bren 2, I would say that my Sig 551A1, it's not a Swiss import, it's a US made 551A1 clone, was probably that, and the 551, the 553, the 550 are my favorite 223 rifles, period. They're extremely well made, like the fit and finish is really nice on them, they're very smooth. The adjustable triggers on them, you can basically make a really decent matched trigger out of them just by tuning it, and reasonably accurate, very reliable, and I think that they look awesome. Like when I think about what a rifle should look like, I kind of picture the Sig 550, 551.
Yeah, they're kind of old and new. They have a certain classic, but they also don't look dated.
They're very svelte looking, and that, to me, that's where the 556 kind of got it wrong, was having that big bulky magwell at the bottom of it, plus the furniture and all the other stuff we won't get into, kind of ruined that look to me. So I was very happy to get my 551. Actually, Misha gave me a heads up about it because we saw it at a local store. They had it for, I think it was about $900, and which is insanely cheap for one of those guns. They just obviously didn't know what they had. It was used, and I went and took some new production cowboy guns up and traded them in for it, and they helped me out by knocking another $100 off of it, so I appreciated that. So it's a great rifle. I love shooting those guns. Absolutely love it. And then, of course, I have the TP9, the BNT TP9, which is also a great short, compact.
You have one of the older DSAs, which they were the importer for a number of years, and now, of course, it's BNT USA.
So yeah, that's my only limitation on getting any more is just the price.
I'm pretty well content. I've kept a 553, I kept a 551 LB, and I kept one of the PE90s. But yeah, I think one of the 552s, all things considered, I will probably hang on to one of those. Yeah. See how it goes, but it's kind of a thing. Different.
So to answer your question, our opinion on them is very high. Zach says, "Do you have any opinions on the James River Factory 66 AK currently sold at Classic Firearms?"
Some people have them. They say they're good. Other people get them and they have had issues. The thing is, James River, they're building them from kits on U.S. receivers, U.S. barrels. So they're not a high tier builder, but they're not the worst. I would take one with a grain of salt. Not really my preference. For what they cost, you can usually find a Mac 90 or even kind of a Cotton Customs Chinese gun. I personally definitely go for the imports, but your mileage may vary.
Yeah, sure.
But with so many Chinese imports out there, I definitely don't think they're as good as those.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That said, as I've said before, the BM59E I have from James River is a nice gun, but I did have to use their customer service, but in their defense, it had nothing to do with their parts. It was an original part that had an issue.
Wolfie says, "Thanks for all you guys do." Thank you, Wolfie. Could you go into detail on the history and adoption of the Romanian AK Dong Also, is there any decent way to take a standard AKM and turn it into something closer to an RPK clone?
Well, this is a family-friendly channel, so we can't. Now, the dong.
Demonetized.
Yeah, it's already, yeah. It's nothing special. I mean, you know, the AMD 65 had a foregrip. It was just a change they made. It came about in the mid-late 60s. I don't have notes in front of me, but you see people saying 66 to 68, and it was just, you know, one of the deals with the AKM that Russia set out to was to make it more controllable and full auto, and it was just another step. That way you could, you know, pull down as you were firing. It was just something they liked, and of course they kept on making the standard palm swell handguards for export, and the early PM63s had them as well. So, and some parts of the Romanian Navy kept using them, so it was always an option. But yeah, I guess also you could probably use it as a rest, kind of a small monopod, you know, lean it up. So
I like them now just for using them as a hand stop. You know, just using them as a modern hand stop, basically, while still it gives you something to hang on to out front, so you can hang on to your dong out front, without adding a some kind of railed system or something to ruin the aesthetic.
It was cheap. I mean, they just you know, larger piece of wood. Probably it was a little easier to manufacture than the palm swell, because you can have just a flat board, and then you just palm swell probably took a larger piece of board and you had to do more machining on it. So yeah, it's just it's a little flair that they did.
Yeah. Zach says, "Hey fellas, I have a GLNIC." Oh, question. Sorry, let me go back. Wolfie had the second question about any decent way to take a standard AKM and turn it into something close to an RPK clone.
No way. The closest, if you try to do that, you're going to end up with something like the AES-10, not the AES-10B, but the AES-10, or some of the Chinese imports, or some of the Egyptian guns like the RML. They're just, I mean, the RPK is on a heavier receiver, it has a reinforced trunnion, it has a thicker top cover, of course different furniture, and of course it has the bigger, heavier barrel, which leads to the trunnion, and different sights, and yeah, so no, not really, not any way I would accept. But yeah, look at the AES-10, the original one, look at pictures of that. That's about as close as you can get, which is basically a lightweight but still extended barrel, and they just crammed a RPK bipod on there.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to hear it, but there is an ice cream truck parked outside.
Oh, they can hear it.
Yeah. Not an essential service, ice cream man. Zach says, "Hey fellas, I have a GLNIC import Mac 90. When I pull the bolt out of the carrier, the retaining pin drops out freely from time to time. Is this normal and acceptable?"
No. That shouldn't be happening. Either your pin's broken, your hole is overly large, or someone lost the original pin and tried to stick another one in. Check out your bolt. If there's nothing wrong with your hole, just get a larger pin. But no, I would definitely not let that be, because one day that is going to come out during firing, and it might jam things up in a way you don't like. So I would definitely fix that, but not normal.
Malcolm says, regarding the Sturmgewehr 90, how do Swiss soldiers attach the sling to the rifle? I understand it involves using paracord to allow ad hoc extension of the sling's length.
You answered your own question. Yeah, I mean, if they don't, I mean, the regular sling is pretty well adjustable, but if they want more length, yeah, they can use paracord. Originally, they had those pigtail style curly cues, but starting in the 90s, they started doing like HK style clip hooks, which are obviously more secure, but those pigtail ones, believe it or not, are very secure for what they are. They don't seem to come off. And so yeah, that's, you answered your question, if they need more length. But really, the original sling, if you put it out of its longest extension, is pretty long. Especially if you hook it to the receiver. They have two rear spots, one below the rear sight and then one on the stock. Obviously, yeah, if you use the stock loop, it might be a little short, but I think a lot of them probably just use the receiver one.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of, earlier when we were talking about this, there's a lot of non-conformity when it comes to sling attachments and things like that.
Yeah, mag pouch, because I mean, a lot of those guns, at least for the regular Army, go home with them and they shoot them, so they kind of do their own thing, even using non-standard slings. It's not like the U.S. military where the rifles are in the barracks. A lot of them are in closets at home.
Yeah.
And yeah, the mag pouch thing is funny. It's pretty much, you got a pocket, use that for your mags.
Yeah. Zach says, in your opinion, what is the value of a Polytech 56S 762 Woodstock spiker with one mag and no additional accessories? Thanks, guys.
Well, I'll let you know, because you asked, and this seems to be exactly the same gun. I've got one of these up right now on Gunbroker, because I had this one come in, and I own one myself, and actually put up a video on my personal channel asking what the YouTube hive mind liked better, and they voted for the other one, so this one's up. I mean, yeah, this seems to be what you're asking. Now, these are actually marked AKS, not 56S from Polytech, but same gun, folding spike bayonet. You know, they seem to be mid-twos without box or anything, you know, one mag, but I don't know exactly. That's kind of the nature of anything collectible, but mid-twos, I don't know.
Travis asked if you would be interested in comparing a Norinco national match. So I'm not going to go into he sent this on a separate message, so I won't go into the details, but ask if we'd be interested in taking a look at one that he's got.
I don't know if he sent that before or after. We did put up a couple of videos on a milled Mac 90, one of those, and we've done one on the Mac 91. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. I mean, feel free to message me or I'll message you, but if it's something different, sure, but I don't know, we might have already covered it, so it's up to you. And of course, there's time and money involved in shipping guns, so it's really up to you if you want to do that. But
you can send a follow-up message to me over the Patreon or email ozarkfirearms@gmail.com, and we'll figure it out from there. Matt Look says, what did you teach in Russia? What were your experiences with the people and students? The good news is while he's off camera, we have music to listen to.
Yeah, I'm getting ice cream.
This is making me go insane.
I taught ESL, English Second Language, because obviously Russians don't need a foreigner teaching them their own history and stuff. As far as the people and stuff, that could be a whole video. Maybe I'll do one on my personal channel. It's funny, as far as, I'm trying to think of like gun-related stuff. Even like house moms and little kids are proud of the Kalashnikov, even if they're not otherwise gun people. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a greater awareness of World War II history there because, well, it was fought on their soil. Yeah. And they're still very proud of it. You know, politically, I've been there a few different times. In 2004, they weren't real big fans of Bush. In 2008, 2009, they weren't real big fans of Obama. They seem not to like the American government a whole lot, but not really anything against the American people. Food's really good. It's a lot more organic, a lot less processed. Vodka's really a thing there.
I was waiting for it. I knew it was going to come out. Yeah,
it really is. Yeah, I actually was just talking with my wife about this a couple of days ago. On my first visit, which was in winter, we were going through a forest not too far outside of Moscow, and we're going to go camping and stuff for the afternoon, because it was during the Christmas, New Year holiday, and stepped on a piece of ground with frozen ice, a puddle, and my boot went through and got soaked. Mm-hmm. And in typical Russian fashion, the solution wasn't, get in the car, warm up, or go back home. It was drink vodka and then eat shashlik. So basically it was start a fire, eat and drink, and you'll feel better. And yes, Sasha was right. I felt better.
Solution to everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot I could recount, again, maybe for a personal channel video, but the gun shops are neat. In fact, the first one I went into, you're not really supposed to get the guns out, unless you have the cars there, because they had gun restrictions and stuff. But the owner, when he found out, he not only got the guns out for me, he actually like took a picture with me grinning and me holding an SVD because they had SVDs, and it was a lot of fun. They had a good. They found it amusing, and I did have on my second trip. I did have my guide dog Prince with me, and surprisingly, yeah, there was no issues with the guide dog there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't really pushing my luck on some situations, but yeah, I took him various places, and there wasn't any pushback from it.
I imagine they have blind people in Russia too.
Well,
Do you hang out with any blind people in Russia?
in Russia, no, but when I was a grad student here and working with the International Students Language Center, there was a blind Russian student who was studying law here, and so they very naturally paired us up, and yeah, she was, we had a good time, and nice, and she had a little bit of culture shock adapting here, but I did what I could, and we kept in touch for a few years after she returned home, and
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at our midpoint for the questions. Feels like we've already done a full Q&A, which under normal circumstances we would have. So I'm going to jump up and turn the camera off and try to chase that ice cream truck down.
Ice cream. Actually, another wife story. The first time she was here after she moved here, when she heard the noise, she asked what it was, and I told her it's an ice cream truck, and she didn't believe me. And then when she finally did, she actually grabbed her purse and went running out the door. Because so apparently they don't have ice cream trucks in Russia.
No.
There you go. No, yeah, we'll be back with part 2 in a day or two, and about the same number of questions. We greatly appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, very much.
If you could, like, share, subscribe.
Yep.
And we'll catch
Nothing
you.
else to add. Go ahead.
This is Misha.
This is Jay.
And we'll catch you very soon.
Bye.
Bye.